On October 24th, 1961, a devoted mother and wife vanished under mysterious circumstances after a routine morning of errands and childcare. Her disappearance was marked by unsettling clues: blood smears throughout the house, a trail leading to her car, and sightings of a disoriented woman matching her description. Despite an extensive investigation, no definitive answers emerged. Intriguingly, she had recently borrowed numerous library books about disappearances and crime, fueling speculation about whether her vanishing was planned. Her case remains a perplexing, unsolved mystery. Welcome to Without a Trace. I'm your host, Jalen. Every file holds a mystery. Every story deserves to be heard. This is Joan's story. Joan Risch was born Joan Bard in Brooklyn, New York on May 12, 1930, to Harold and Josephine Bard. The family moved to Mountain Lakes, New Jersey when Joan was just 8 years old. It was there in February of 1939 that her parents died in a house fire. Harold was found lying on the living room floor with a telephone in his hand. Josephine was found a few feet away on a chair. Both died from smoke inhalation. Neither was burned. One of the most unusual things about that fire was the way the family's dog was found. The Bards had a huge German Shepherd that was known to bark whenever anyone was near the apartment. After the smoke had cleared and the firemen were poking through the ruins, they found the dog wrapped up in a blanket in the basement. It appeared that someone had put him to sleep before the fire started. The fire was described as suspicious, although an investigation was inconclusive and the fire was deemed accidental. Joan was visiting relatives in Brooklyn at the time and subsequently went to live with her maternal aunt and uncle who formally adopted her. Joan took their last name and became Joan Nattrass. Joan graduated from Wilson College in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania in 1952 with a degree in English literature. She had dreams of working in publishing, but she had to start from the bottom, starting as a secretary and working her way up to becoming an editorial assistant at Harcourt, Brace and World. Joan then moved to Thomas Y. Cromwell Company where she met one of the executives, Martin Risch. Joan and Martin married in 1956 and she left her job to raise a family with him. The couple moved to Ridgefield, Connecticut where they welcomed their first child, Lillian, in 1957. A son, David, followed in 1959. In April 1961, the family relocated to Lincoln, Massachusetts, a suburb of Boston where Martin pursued a career with a paper company. Joan was described as being the shy type. She had a small group of friends and kept to herself. While in Lincoln, Joan became an active member of the League of Women Voters. This was her only activity outside of being a stay-at-home mom. On the morning of October 24, 1961, Martin got up early and left the house, heading to Logan Airport to catch an 8 a.m. flight to New York for a business trip. Shortly after Martin left, Joan woke up the children to start the day. She served them breakfast, then took her son across the street to a neighbor, Barbara Barker's house, while she and Lillian left for a dentist appointment. Following the appointment, Joan took Lillian on a brief shopping trip to a nearby department store, paying in cash. From there, Joan picked up David and the trio arrived at home at roughly 11:15 a.m. Shortly afterward, a delivery driver for a dry cleaner came to the house to pick up several of Martin's suits. He entered the house and did not recall anything out of the ordinary about Joan or the home. Joan made lunch for her children, then put David down for an afternoon nap, which usually lasted until about 2 p.m. At 1 p.m., Barbara brought her son Douglas over to play with Lillian. While they were there, Barbara recalls seeing Joan come in and out of the house to prune some plants. Shortly before 2 p.m., Joan came back out again and took Lillian and Douglas back across the street to Barbara's house, saying she would be back. Lillian and Douglas played outside, but they couldn't see the Risch's household. Around 2:15 p.m., Barbara briefly saw Joan wearing what she thought was a trench coat over her clothing, moving quickly up her driveway, carrying something red with outstretched arms from her car towards the garage. At the time, she assumed her neighbor was chasing one of the children. This was the last known sighting of Joan. An hour later, Virginia, who lived next door, got off the school bus. As she neared her home, she saw an unfamiliar car. 5 minutes later, another nearby resident said they stopped while driving up the road to let a car back out of the Risch's driveway. Barbara took Lillian back to her home at 3:40 p.m., intending to take her children out on a shopping trip with her. Believing Joan was still at the house, she left. When she returned at 4:15 p.m., Lillian came back to the Barker's house telling Barbara, "Mommy is gone and the kitchen is covered with red paint." Lillian's brother was found crying in his crib because his diaper needed to be changed. After Barbara went to the Risch house herself and verified Lillian's account, she called the police at 4:33 p.m. Police arrived within 5 minutes and found bloody smears on the walls, an overturned table, and the handset on the wall-mounted telephone ripped loose and thrown in a trash can, which had been taken from its usual place under the sink and left in the middle of the room. The sergeant responding to the case thought Joan may have committed suicide and searched the house for a body. When he didn't find it, he realized he needed backup to search the surrounding area. It was possible, he believed, that the entire department would need to be involved. The Lincoln police called local hospitals and asked to be notified if a woman matching Joan's description showed up or had already been admitted. The Massachusetts State Police called Martin to inform him of the family emergency. He changed his plans and caught the next flight back to Boston. At 2:50 a.m., having returned home, police interviewed Martin. Martin had a solid alibi from the time he left his home at 6:50 a.m. that previous morning until his early return. Martin was cleared of any involvement in his wife's disappearance. In the house, police found more clues. 4 letters delivered that day to the mailbox at the foot of the driveway had not yet been brought in. In the kitchen, the telephone directory was found to have been opened to the page where emergency numbers could be written down, although none had been. Investigators found Joan's pocketbook and were able to determine that after her purchases, she would have had less than $10 left, the equivalent of $105 in today's economy. In canvassing the neighborhood, police found several other residents who believed they spotted Joan that afternoon. At 2:45 p.m., a woman wearing similar clothing to Joan was seen walking toward Concord. She appeared to be wandering hunched over as if she were cold and appeared untidy. A similar-looking woman with blood running down her legs was seen walking between 3:15 and 3:30 p.m. She, too, seemed disoriented and appeared to be cradling something near her stomach. Another sighting, reportedly around 4:30 p.m., saw the woman walking. Back at the Risch's household, investigators could not conclude what had happened. Large blood smears were on the kitchen walls and floor, and some were on the phone as well. 3 bloody fingerprints were found, but could not be identified. In Joan's absence, they could not be compared to hers. Police later said that while the bloodstains in the kitchen might have resulted from a struggle, they seemed more consistent with someone staggering around and trying to support themselves following an injury. Police also found an apparent attempt to clean up the blood using paper towels and her son's clothing. The kitchen was not the only place blood was found, however, and the blood found elsewhere in the house, as well as outside, complicated the narrative. A drop was on the first step of a stairway, 2 more were found at the top of the stairs, along with 8 in the master bedroom and 1 near a window in the children's bedroom. Another trail of blood led out of the kitchen into the driveway. It ended at Joan's car, which was stained in 3 places: the right rear fender, the left side of the hood near the windshield, and in the very center of the trunk. Investigators found this last one particularly hard to interpret. It could not be determined where the bleeding might have started, upstairs, in the kitchen, or the driveway, as all possibilities were supported by the evidence. Also, unanswered was the question of whether Joan had left on her own or had been accompanied or even carried, perhaps involuntarily. The end of the trail in the driveway might have indicated that she had gotten into another car at that point, but that was not certain. What investigators did not find was also significant. Despite the large bloody smears on the kitchen floor and evidence of activity elsewhere in the house, there were no bloody footprints. Whoever had been walking there had either been extremely careful or very fortunate. The blood was found to have been type O, which is both the most common and the type Joan was known to have. A state police chemist found that despite appearances of a severe wound, the total blood shed amounted to merely half a pint, which would not have suggested a life-threatening injury. In the wake of Joan's disappearance, a reporter with a local newspaper went to the town's public library to research similar cases. In one of the books she checked out, which discussed the disappearance of Brigham Young's 27th wife, she found that Joan had borrowed the book in September, 1 month before her disappearance. Joan had also checked out Into Thin Air, a book about a woman who, like Joan, had left behind blood smears when she went missing. The reporter published her findings in the newspaper. Then, a group of library volunteers looked through records and found that Joan, a regular borrower, had taken out 25 books over the summer of 1961, many of which had to do with murders and missing person cases. Based on this, reporters at the local newspaper believed Joan might have staged the crime scene and disappeared voluntarily. 2 of the books were written by Harry Carmichael, who became interested in the disappearance and developed his own theory. He felt Joan was still alive, somewhere between Boston and New York, but was afraid to come forward because she harbored a terrible secret. With no further evidence emerging after the initial investigation, all theories of Joan's fate have remained, and the case maintains its open status. Joan's library book history and her difficult past have supported the reporter's theory that her disappearance was planned as a way to escape a dissatisfying life. However, one of Joan's friends from college said that was unlikely, as Joan was very content with her life as a suburban housewife. Others believe Joan is dead. The most likely theory is that Joan fell down at home and hit her head, causing her to bleed a lot and become disoriented and confused. She set off on foot to find help and wandered off into the woods where she died. Martin rarely talked about the case in his later years. On one occasion, when he spoke about believing that his wife was still alive. He speculated that she may have had amnesia or a psychological break and had forgotten how to return home. Thank you for listening to Without a Trace. I hope you enjoyed our deep dive into Joan's disappearance. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe and follow Without a Trace on social media. And join me next week as I dive into another case.